Welcome back to part 2 in our video series where we are creating a game called Glacier Race using Scratch. As you can see on the top left here, this is what we created in the first part of the series where we got our background scrolling down the page nicely. What we're going to do in this video is add ourselves a little car that can actually drive through this track, as well as a couple of obstacles of snowballs that he needs to avoid. So to get started, I'll just stop that and I'm going to paint a new sprite into my game. So press that paintbrush there to make a new sprite. And we're going to be drawing ourselves a new red car. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to pick up my rectangle tool. I'm going to choose red as my color, and I'm going to choose the fill option down the bottom here, so it fills in the rectangle red. Now just draw a rectangle on your page, like so. And grab your line tool and change your color to black, and give yourself a little bit more thickness. And while holding shift, just draw a line that goes through roughly the same width on either side, something like that. Once you've drawn that, you want to draw another one up towards the front of the car. It's about the same in length. Then we're going to grab the rectangle tool and we're simply going to draw ourselves some tyres. Okay, so try and get them about halfway across that stick. Now when you draw this, don't click anywhere because we're going to keep this rectangle selected. We're going to press Ctrl C and then Ctrl V to copy and paste that. We want these tyres the exact same size. Alrighty, so then you want to position it about halfway along the next rod, somewhere around there. And just keep pressing Ctrl C and Ctrl V to get these tyres put on there. You want to put them in basically the exact same position on either side, so they're almost symmetrical. It's a mirror image on either side of the car. Otherwise they might look a little bit lopsided. And mine probably will look a little bit lopsided when I do this, but we'll do the best we can. Okay, so be as fussy as possible, but hopefully you end up with something looking close to that. Now what we're going to do is get rid of these black parts in the middle. Now I guess there's a few ways to do this. You could grab your rectangle tool here and choose red again, and simply draw out a rectangle that covers them up, like that. And you can stretch this part down until it covers the bottom section, something like that. Okay, then we're just going to pick up the ellipse tool, which is your circle tool here. Just choose a lighter shade of red and just draw yourself a circle over the top of it. Okay, now I've got to tell you, but your race car must be facing to the right, otherwise it's not going to work with the code that we're going to put in shortly. So make sure your race car, the front of it is pointing off to the right. Okay, but you should be looking something like that for your race car. That looks pretty good. So when you're happy, just go back to your scripts here and that will save those changes. Now you can see that my race car here is quite large. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just grab the shrink tool and really shrink that down. So we want to fit 2 cars on our screen. So somewhere around that size is probably more than more than enough. That's probably a good size. So it doesn't matter where you put that at the moment because we're about to do the setup code to get him set up for his starting position. Now before we start the setup code, what we're going to do is just go over to our data tab here and we're going to make a new variable. So just click on the make a new variable. That variable name is going to be called spinning, and you need to check the box that says for this sprite only. That's really important that you change that checkbox to for this sprite only. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting in some code to make him have a bit of a crash. So when he hits the side walls here or runs into a snowball, we're going to make him spin around and have a bit of a crash. Now we don't want that to happen for the other player. When we bring in the second car, we don't want it spinning around as well. So just make sure that you're only putting the spinning on this sprite only. Click OK once you've got that. You'll see sprite spinning appear on your page there. Just uncheck the box over in this data tab and that will hide it. Alright, so now that we've got that variable made, we're ready to start our coding. So in the events tab here, what we're going to do is call up the setup code first of all. Okay, so when you receive the message to set up the car sprite, what we're going to do is go to looks and we're going to show it first of all. And we're also going to bring it to the front of everything else, so it's in front of all other things on the stage. Okay. Once we've got it there, we want to position it in its start position. So basically, we want to put it in the center of the page. So I'll just choose the go-to X and Y values here and set them to 0, 0, and that puts him right in the center of the page when he starts. Okay, so if I run the game, he's smack bang in the center. The other thing I want to do though is just nudge him off to the left a little bit because we're going to put our second player in here as well, starting in the same on the same axis. So let's just bump that X value there down to -40, and you'll see that it'll shift over to the left a little bit. Okay, and that gives room now for the blue car to join the race a bit later on. What we're going to also do is make sure that he's facing straight up. So choose the point in direction option and set that to 0. And the other thing I'm going to do is just, actually we'll play that and have a look. So when I run the game now, he's facing straight up, which is what we want. The other thing I want to do is just change the set spinning to 0. Okay, while set spinning is set to 0, it means he's driving normally. If that number changes, then that means he must have had a crash, and we'll need to start him spinning around the page. Alright, so that's looking good. We've got him set up. He can start the game nicely, but he can't move anywhere. So what we need to do now is add in some controls to make him move. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to this More Blocks tab. I don't think we've used this before, but what we're going to do is we're going to make our own block. And it's going to be called Car Controls. So click OK once you do that, and you'll see a purple block appear on your stage that says Define the Car Controls. So it's basically telling you, how do you want to move this car? So, in the Motion tab, first thing we want to do is just make sure that he's pointing straight up. Okay, and once he's pointing straight up, let's use the WASD letters on our keyboard to make this guy move. So we're going to go to the Control tab here, and we're just going to bring out a whole bunch of if-then statements. And we're going to be sensing what key we're pushing. Okay, so let's start by moving with, actually, got the wrong one there, it's not touching. It's key pressed. Sorry, brought it the wrong one then. So if we press the key, let's start with the key A. That will move us to the left. Okay, so when we're moving to the left, what we want to do is point our car in the direction that we want to go. So we don't want to completely turn left, which is -90. We might move about a third of that distance. So -30 degrees. We'll point our car a little bit to the left to show that we are turning in that direction. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to change X by the car speed. Okay, so it's basically just going to move along the x-axis at the speed that our car's moving. That's all we need to do. Actually, sorry, that's for turning right. To turn left, we're going to need to bring in an operator. We need to bring in the minus operator first of all. Put 0, take away car speed. Sorry, we need to go into our negatives when we turn left. So that should turn our car left. Sorry about all these mistakes, but let's give that a test run and just... Actually, it's not going to work just yet. Need to put in some more code. But that will turn our car left when we put in a couple more lines of code. So if you want to turn right, it's a similar kind of thing. We're going to do an if-then statement. And in sensing again, this time I'll get the right one. If, which key? It's going to be the D key. So the letter D is pressed. We want to be able to turn right. So it's going to be as simple as going to the Motion tab and telling it to point in the direction 90 degrees is right. Remember, we're only going to turn a little bit though. We don't want to turn completely right. So just a little bit to the right will be 30 degrees. So we'll point direction 30. And we'll change the X by car speed. Okay. So that should have us moving left and right, no worries. What we need to do now is up and down. Okay, so when we press up, we're actually going to speed up a little bit and drive towards the top of the page. When we press down, we're actually just going to look like we're moving down the page, but it's going to be basically braking. We're going to be slowing our car down. So it's another if-then statement. Let's do the up direction first. So if we sense the key W being pressed, okay, W is going to make us go up. All we need to do is go back to motion, and we're on the y-axis now, so we need to change the y value, and we're going to change it by the speed of the car. Okay, so we can speed up a little bit to go up, and then to go down. Finally, it's the if-then statement again, and we'll be sensing for the S key this time to go down. So look for your S key. Okay, so if the key S is being pressed, we're going to change the Y value again. And this time we're just going to move down at the same speed that the road is moving down the page. So remember, our road is scrolling down the page. Well, our car's going to scroll down at the same time. So it's going to make look like it's stopped, or it's going to give the illusion that he's braking. Okay. Now these controls are all well and good, but at the moment they're not working. Okay, what we need is for our game, or our game loop, to tell us that it's okay to start moving. Okay, so we need to bring out when I receive the move message. When you get that message to move, that's when we want these controls to kick off and allow us to start moving our car. So just in more blocks, bring out car controls. And that's basically saying, when you get the message to move, activate these car controls. So now when we run the game, we should be right to go right, left, up, and down. Okay, so that's working nicely. W, A, S, and D is what's going to get you around there. Alright, so that's looking good. What I want to do next is have a bit of a collision with the edges of the road. At the moment, if I run the game, I can drive off into the trees, and that doesn't look very realistic. Okay, this is a racing game, not a four-wheel drive game. So basically, when we hit this aqua blue line, the edge of the road, we want to have a bit of a spin out, or a bit of a crash. Alright, so the red car selected here, we're going to go back to more blocks, and we're going to make another new block called check collisions. So it's going to be checking our game for when we have a collision with that side wall. I might just move this over here, neaten this up a little bit. Okay, so we're in the middle of our page here. We've got define check collisions. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to work out if we're touching either the edges of road 1 or the edges of road 2. And if we are, then we want to have a crash. So we need to do another if-then statement. So go to control and bring out your if-then. And we're going to choose operators and bring in the OR operator, because we need to see if we're hitting road 1 or road 2. So now you can go to sensing, bring in the touching, and look for road 1. I'm just going to duplicate that and put in the second one and put in road 2. Okay, so now we're checking for collisions with either road number 1 or road number 2. Okay, it doesn't worry about, if I just go back to costumes for a sec on this road, let's say road 2, because this middle part's transparent, the game won't know that we're actually driving along that and have a collision with the road. Okay, it's only looking for the bits that are filled in with colour. So as soon as we hit this blue line around the edge of our page here, that's when the collision occurs. Okay, so back onto my red car here for a sec. If we do touch the edge of road 1 or road 2, then we want to set our spinning. So in your data tab here, set spinning to 50. And you can adjust that number to have a spin out for a longer or shorter duration, but I think 50 is pretty good. It's about 1 second of spinning, and what it's going to do is just bring your car down the bottom of the page and it'll restart down here. Okay, so what we need to do is actually define what happens when that car spins. Like I said before, he's going to spin around for a second and then restart at the bottom of the page. We actually need to tell the game that he has to do that. So in more blocks here, we're going to make another block called spin. And click OK. And you'll see we've got this little purple block here, define spin. So we need to tell the game what happens when the car spins out. Alright, so let's go to our sound library first of all. We want to play a sound. The pop sound's no good to us. What I'm looking for is a rattle sound. If you look through in alphabetical order, you should hear the rattle. I'll turn it up a bit and see if you can hear it. Yeah, it's alright. It's okay, so you can probably hear that through your speakers, but bring in the rattle sound to your sound library, and then back in scripts, we're going to go to the sound tab, which is the first one that plays the sound of the rattle. So as soon as we start spinning out, we play the sound of the rattle, so it sounds like we've had a crash. Now then we want to go to motion and turn our car anti-clockwise by 30 degrees. So it'll spin to the left by 30 degrees. And we're going to change the spinning now in our data tab by -1. Basically our spinning is set to 50. Okay, and as soon as it starts colliding, that number's going to start working down from 50. And we want it to get all the way to 0 before we stop spinning. Okay, so we need to bring in an if-then statement now, attached at the bottom here. So we need to say if our spinning is equal to 0. So in my data tab I'll bring out spinning and equal to 0. Okay, so if our spinning equals 0, that basically means we've spun out, and it's been doing it for about a second now. Once it gets all the way to 0, then we want to restart our little car at the bottom of the screen, somewhere around there. So we go to motion, we choose go to X, and set it to -40, so it's just off center, and at the bottom of the page -180 for the Y value. Okay. The other thing we're going to do, since he's been spinning around, he could be pointing in any old direction, but we want him pointing straight up again, so tell him to point in direction of 0 degrees. Okay, and that's what's going to make him point straight up after his little spin out. Okay. Now the last thing we need to do is go back to this code over here. I'll just move these out of the way. It's a little chunk of code you had up before that says when I receive move, we activate the car controls. Now we also need to activate check collisions. Okay, so our game is constantly checking to see if we're actually colliding with these walls. So in more blocks, just get your check collisions and bring it out. Okay, so when your car starts moving, we've activated his car controls. We're checking for collisions. Now if he has a collision, what we need to do is tell him to start spinning and deactivate the car controls so we can't move our little car around the screen anymore. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to detach the brown and the purple ones for a moment, and we're going to go over to control and bring in an if then else statement. It's going to attach to the brown. So if our spinning over here is equal to 0, I'll bring spinning out. In my operators, look for the equal sign. Now this goes between the if and the then. So if spinning is equal to 0, that means he's not spinning and he's driving normally. Then that means our car controls and our check collision blocks over here will be running. But if he is spinning, it means he's crashed. What we need to activate is the spin. Okay, so our car spins out. So in more blocks, just bring in the spin. Okay, so one more time, if we're driving normally, car controls is working and we're always checking for collisions. As soon as we have that collision, we deactivate those two blocks and we start the spin block. Alrighty, so hopefully that's going to work. I don't know, let's have a look. We'll just move around and crash into the wall. Okay, it's not moving too bad. He's not moving down the page. I did want him to move down the page when he has a bit of a crash. Okay, so what I'm going to do, just going to stop that for a second. I think it was back in the spin here. Yeah, it was in the spin here. I'm going to go over to the motion here. When he starts spinning, I want him to fall down the page at the same speed as the road. So what I'm going to do is just change his Y in the data tab here by the speed of the road, so road speed. And we're going to need to sneak that in just in there below change spinning by -1. And then we're going to change his Y value by the road speed, so he falls down the page at the same speed as the road. So let's try another collision now. That's better, so he falls down the bottom of the page. So I go up the top and have a crash, he falls down the page and then restarts in that -40X position and -180Y position. Okay, so don't forget to add that last little bit of code I forgot to put in there. And that's looking pretty nice now. Okay, so the other thing I want to add in now before I finish this video is a snowball, so some obstacles for him to get past on the road. Okay, so we're going to need to make a new sprite for that, and we're going to paint that sprite ourselves. Now when you draw this sprite, I want you to watch this little section up here. You can see that it's a 1 by 1 pixel sprite at the moment. We want this snowball to be around the 40 by 40 pixel mark. Okay, and to draw a snowball, you just want to grab your brush, grab that darkish aqua color, and you want to change the thickness of your line to be reasonably thin. And you're just going to draw a rough looking snowball like so. You can see that that's 43 by 45 pixels now up here, and that's pretty good. That's close to 40 by 40. Just grab your fill bucket once you've drawn that, grab the color white, and color your snowball in white. And that's your snowball, something simple like that. You can go back to scripts now. I've just realised I haven't renamed these two sprites, so it's probably worthy of renaming that sprite to snowball. And this one over here, this one's going to be called red car. Alright, so we've got all our sprites named appropriately now. Back on the snowball, what we're going to do is set it up first of all. So in the events tab, like usual, bring out the when I receive setup. Okay, so as soon as it gets the message from the game loop to set up the sprites, all we're going to do for the snowball is make sure that it's in front of everything and that we hide it. Now the reason we're hiding this snowball is because we're going to create clones of it so we can have multiple snowballs appear across our page. So we're just going to hide the original snowball, which is this one, and then we're going to make clones of that original appear across our track. Alrighty, so to do that, we'll just go to the Control tab and bring out the when I start as a clone. Clone as a clone. When we start as a clone, we need to pick its X and Y values, so where it's actually going to appear on the page. Okay, so the X value is the horizontal axis. So where do we want it to appear on the horizontal axis? Well, I want them to appear at random locations, so it's changing all the time. So in the Operators tab here, you can choose a pick random, and I'm going to choose anywhere along the X-axis. So minus 200 to 200 is anywhere along our X-axis. The Y value, I always want it to start at the top of the page, so somewhere up here. So it'll be anywhere along the X-axis, but always at the top of our page. Okay, so the Y value needs to be 180. And the other thing I want to do is make sure that these clones are showing, because at the moment they're hidden. If we click show, now when they start on the page, they will actually be visible. Okay, so that's got them all set up and they'll appear on our page, but they're not moving anywhere. Okay, so we're not going to see them just yet. So we need to go over to Events, and we need to receive a message move before they actually start moving down our page. Now we want these snowballs to fall down the page at the same speed as the road is moving. Okay, so if I run the game, you can see that the road's moving down at a certain speed. We want the snowballs to fall down at the exact same speed, so it looks like they're fixed on the road at a fixed point. So what we're going to do is just go to Motion, and we're going to change the Y by the speed of the road. So the Y value of the snowball is going to be exact same speed as the road. When it gets to the bottom of the page, we want to delete the snowball, so we want it to disappear. Okay, so we just need to put in a quick if-then statement below here. So when it's moving, what we want to do is just check to see if it goes below the minus 175 position. Okay, so minus 175 there, and in Motion, just bring out the Y position. Put in the first box. So if the Y value, the Y position of the snowball is less than 175, which means down the bottom of our screen here, then we'll just delete it. So in Control, the very last option there is delete this clone. Okay, so that's looking good. What else we've got to do? We've got to go over to the game loop sprite now. So I'll just right click and clean up that code and head over to my game loop. Now in my game loop, what we want to do is go to the events here and bring out when I receive move. And what we want to do is just tell the game to start producing those snowballs on the page. So it's going to be an if-then statement, and we're going to go to our operators here and grab the equals operator, the equal to one, and then we're going to choose a pick random. We want these snowballs to appear at random times, so we're going to put pick random 1 to 200 and just put equals 1. So each time the number 1 appears in between those random numbers that get generated, then we're going to, in Control, create a clone of the snowball. Alright, if you want more snowballs to appear, just change that number there down to like 100 or 50 or something like that, but you don't want too many snowballs appearing because it will ruin the game. It'll just be too hard, so I'd leave it at 200. Okay. The last thing I want to do now is have a collision with those snowballs. If I just run the game for a little while, I'm hoping that some snowballs will appear. As I said, they're not going to appear too frequently. 1 to 200 is probably once every 15 to 20 seconds you might see a snowball. There's one right there. So they are working. What we want to do, but, is go back to the red car now and have a collision with those snowballs. So when we have a collision with the snowball, we want to spin out, like as if we're crashed into the side walls. So what we need to do is modify this check collisions piece of code. It's actually going to get quite long, this one. We're going to affect this section here. I'm going to pull that green bit out for the moment. So what we need to do is we need to check for a collision with the road 1, road 2, or the snowball now. So what I'm going to do is just go back to my operators here, and I'm going to bring out the OR operator again and drop it back in there. And I'm going to put touching road 1 and 2 inside there. So now I just need to go to sensing, bring out touching and put it in the first box there and choose the snowball. So now we've got 3 different options for our collision. So if we're touching the snowball, or touching road 1, or touching road 2, then we start our spinning. Okay, so that ought to do us. Let's give that a test run. I guess we've got to wait now for a snowball to appear on our page. I might even come into full screen for a look at this. There's one. I don't think I'll be able to reach that because it's off the page. Here we go. There we go. That's working nicely. So we've got our car driving through the screen. If he hits a snowball, he spins out. If he hits the wall, he spins out. So that's working quite nicely. I might stop the video here because I have been babbling on for quite a while. I'll see you in the next video where we will add a second car to our game. Alrighty, so don't forget to save that as well.